Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Welcome back to Mr. Morrow's Algebra class. And for my students, welcome back to the fourth quarter. Actually, welcome to the beginning of the fourth quarter. Today we're going to move on into real algebra, as I like to call it, because we're going to start working with exponents. And from here, we start working with polynomials. Once we work with polynomials, we start learning how to factor. And once we learn how to factor, we can start working with quadratics. And then we learn how to solve quadratics. And then we can go to radicals. And then we can go to rationals, hopefully, if I have time. Like I say, pretty much for every lesson, the beginning parts of the chapter are usually the most important, because these are the parts that are going to be repeated over and over and over and over throughout the chapter. So if you learn this now, you aren't going to have much of a problem. If you don't learn this now, step by step, piece by piece, then what's going to happen is you're going to run into a lot of problems. Okay, so let's be positive, let's do the right thing, and let's focus. First of all, we're dealing with exponents today, so I just wanted to give you a little brief review. Remember that when you have x to the n power, okay, the x is your base. That is the number or value being affected by the exponent. The n is the exponent or the power. The exponent or power tells you how many times to multiply the base by itself. So if I have 2 squared, that equals 4, for example, because that's 2 times 2. If I have 3 to the third power, that's 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. Now, please remember, because we have worked with exponents already before, correct? Okay. Please remember the following. Little reminder for you. If I have negative 2 squared and I have negative 2 in parentheses squared, what is the difference here between these two? Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Excellent. Remember, friends, that the exponent only affects what's immediately to the left of the exponent. So in this particular case, this is a negative 1, that's what the negative represents, times 2 times 2, so this will equal negative 4. As opposed to the second example, when I have negative 2 in parentheses, everything inside of the parentheses is affected. So that would give you negative 2 times negative 2, which is 4. Does that make sense? Yes, no, maybe, kind of, sort of? Yes? Okay. So then let's move on. Please remember that this is going to come back to haunt you. I promise you. You're going to see it a lot, and you're going to say, oh, no, I forgot. Don't forget. Learn it right now. An exponent affects the value immediately to its left only, or everything inside of parentheses. Okay? Now, let's talk about zero exponents. Zero exponents are easy. Anything to the 0 power is 1, period. Done. Anything. So, 3 to the 0 power is going to equal. Now, what will negative 3 to the 0 equal? Negative 1. Why negative? What is the 0 exponent affecting? The 3. Not the negative here, right? Remember that that negative is represented by a negative 1 being multiplied to 3 to the 0. So negative 1 times 3 to the 0, which is 1, equals negative 1. Be careful with that, okay? What about negative 3 in parentheses to the 0 power? That equals 1 as well. Pretty simple, right? Anything to the 0 power is 1. Now, negative exponents. Negative exponents are very easy to work with as long as you know how to turn them into positive exponents. Yes, sir. No, I cannot scroll up because it's a video, but you can go home later and hit play. Thank you, sir. Now, x to the negative power. When I have a negative exponent, I can make it a positive exponent very easily by simply moving it to the denominator or the numerator, depending on where it's originally located. What am I talking about? I have x to the negative n over 1. It's in the numerator. If I want to make this negative exponent a positive, I simply bring it down. I do not change the base. I don't make the base negative or positive. That never changes. All I'm changing is the power of the exponent. If I have a negative exponent in the denominator here, okay, I want to make it positive, all I do is bring it up to the top. So, if I have a negative exponent in the numerator, I bring it down to the denominator and it becomes positive. If I have a negative exponent in the denominator, then I bring it up to the numerator and the exponent becomes positive. Go ahead, son.
When you're going to bring the exponent to the other side.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. I'm not bringing it to any side. If I have 6 to the negative 2, I bring it down to the denominator and it becomes positive. If I have a negative exponent in the denominator, then I move it up to the top and it becomes positive. I don't understand what you're saying.
When you're going to bring the exponent to the numerator or denominator, if there's already an exponent at that numerator or denominator.
I'm just confused with what you're asking. Could you give me an example? How about you give me an example?
Um,
So whatever, I have x to the negative 2. Okay?
and
I want to make that positive. I bring it down to the denominator.
what if there was already an exponent at that denominator?
If it, whoa, sorry. I don't know what happened there. If I have, like, let's say here, a y cubed. Okay, now this becomes 1 over x squared y cubed. I bring it down to make it positive. What's the problem here, guys? Okay, what are we seeing? If I have a negative exponent and it's in the numerator, I bring it down to make the positive exponent. If I have a negative exponent in the denominator and I bring it up, I make it a positive exponent. What don't you see there, sir? So I can help you. Are you sure? Okay. This is going to get a lot more complicated because soon you could have something like this where you have an x in the denominator. Let's say you had x to the 5th. Then this would be 1 over x squared times x to the 5th, which would equal 1 over x to the 7th. Because when you multiply the same base, you add the exponents. We're going to learn that tomorrow. But for right now, I just need you to understand that if you have anything raised to the 0 power, it equals 1. If I have something like this, 3 to the negative 2 power, that's going to equal 1 over 3 squared. Why, Mr. Morrow? Because this is in the numerator, and for me to bring this, to make this positive, I got to bring it down to the denominator. So negative 3 to the negative 2 equals 1 over 3 to the positive 2, which equals 1/9. That makes sense. Boys? Hey. Now I have negative 5 to the negative 2. Who is the negative 2 affecting here? The 5 or the negative 5? Just the 5. Very good. So what happens here is the negative 1 stays in the numerator, but I got to bring that 5 to the negative 2 down to the denominator. Do you see what happened there? This negative stayed up here because I am not changing the sign of the number. I am simply changing the sign of the exponent. So the negative stayed, and then this guy went down to the denominator. What is that going to equal? Negative 1/25th, because 5 times 5 is 25. Now, what about this example? In parentheses, negative 2 is being raised to the negative 2. Who's being affected here by this exponent of negative 2? The negative 2. So this whole thing I'm going to bring down to the bottom. And then what is that going to equal? My friends? 1/4. Negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2, which is 4. Yes, sir. The negative 2 will never change. All you're changing when you move a number or a variable from numerator to denominator is you're changing the sign of the exponent, and that's it. You never change the sign of the actual base. That stays the same. All you're changing is the sign of the exponent. Are you with me here? Okay. Let's move on. Let's just practice now. Let's simplify each expression and express using only positive exponents. Okay? Only positive exponents. So number 1. Okay. First of all, what's y to the 0? So that cancels. Bye-bye. I have an x to the negative 2 in the numerator, and I have a w to the negative 4 in the denominator. How do I rewrite this expression so that I have positive exponents only? Sir, you bring this guy up. Go ahead. Very good. You bring the x down. So this would be w to the 4th over x squared. Done. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Does that make sense? Awesome. B, 1 over x squared y to the negative 3, w to the 0. Immediately, what is w to the 0? And this guy comes up to make it positive. Beautiful. So it would equal y, 3. Really, guys? Y cubed. Thank you. We've talked about these things, guys. Please. Over x squared. Thank you. Guys, I'm not trying to be rude, but y3 means this. y3 is that. You got to tell me to the 3rd power or cubed, please. Sir. Well, what's 1 times y cubed? 1 times anything is itself. Thank you so very much, sir. May I continue? Okay. 3 to the negative 2x to the 0 over y to the 5th, z to the negative 3. Very good. X to the 0 is 1. What do I do with this and what do I do with that? Very good. The z to the negative 3 is going to go up. Z cubed. The 3 to the negative 2 is going to come down. So I got 3 squared y to the 5th. What does that simplify to? What does that simplify to? Z cubed over 9 y to the 5th. My friends, why did this confuse you when I said this simplifies to? I only had one person answer me. Why? 3 squared is what? So what is going on that we can't answer this? How can I help you? Folks? How can I help you? Yes, sir. Thank you. It's 9 y to the fifth. You always put the number in front of the coefficient. Does that make sense, folks? Thank you. Okay, let's continue. I got negative 5 to the negative 2. What happens here? This becomes, okay, so this becomes, no, so this becomes 1 over negative 5 squared, which equals not 25, it equals 1 over 25. Okay, let's continue. Negative 4x to the 0. What is the 0 affecting? The x and only the x. So, what would this answer be? Negative what? Okay, we're having an argument here. Negative 1, some people say. Negative 4, another person says. What do you think? It's negative 4. I don't know why you would say 1. And if it was like this, that would be negative 1. If it was like this, that would be 1. But the way I had it, only the x is being affected. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. Thank you. What happens to the x? Anything to the 0 power is 1. Excuse me. Okay, so how about e? I got w to the 0, x to the negative 4, y to the negative 2, over 12 to the negative 2. Yes, sir. W to the 0 equals 1. Very good. Yeah, you're right. X to the negative 4th comes down as x to the 4th. Good. Y to the negative 2. Yeah. Comes down to the denominator. And then 12 to the negative 2 goes. Very good. Now, what does that simplify to? Beautiful. Y squared. Beautiful. Fantastic. 144 over x to the 4th y squared. Beautiful. Fantastic. I could not have done that better myself. Well done, son. Thank you. How about f? Y to the negative 5x cubed over z to the negative 2. What would that simplify to? Yes, sir, my brother. Tell me what you got to do. The y down here and the z. Very good. So what does that look like once we do that? Starting in the numerator. Good job. Z squared. No, and the x cubed, right? We can't forget that that's there. Over. Y to the 5th power. Very good. Great job. That's exactly perfect. That's exactly right. Does that make sense? Promise. Yes, sir. Is there an order you have to follow? No, the only order you're going to have to follow is standard form, which we haven't gone into yet. We're going to go into that really soon, probably within a few days. So we'll have a standard order where you have to go from highest exponent or degree, that's what it's called, we'll learn that, to lowest exponent or degree. But no, there's no alphabetical order per se, sir. Yes, sir.
The instructions for these examples, it says simplify each expression and express using only positive.
Yeah, only using positive exponents. No, 99.9% of the time they're always going to want positive exponents because that's what you work with. When as a mathematician you work with positive exponents, not negatives. So if you see a negative exponent, that's why you have to be able to convert them. If you had, let's say, x to the negative 3, y squared z to the fourth over w to the negative 5. Um, I can't work with that. I need to work with positive exponents. So what would this become?
That x goes to the negative x to the
Always go to the
fifth,
numerator first.
so it'll be w
There you go, w to the fifth.
or x
No, what about these guys? Y to the second, then z to the fourth over x to the third or x cubed. Remember, when it's a power of 2, it's squared. When it's a power of 3, it's cubed. Does that make sense, everybody? You promise? Okay. Thank you very much. Hope you learned a lot. Have a great day.